Hi, welcome to the first asynchronous component of your Module 1 experience with PAsmart. We are really excited to have you in our Schoology course and to get started this week, going through July into August. This is the only required component that you've got. We'll have a short recording here for you to watch, and then there are a few follow-up activities to do either along the way or after you've watched this recording. I'm Sarah. I'll be kind of leading you through this part of your journey, but we'll begin now. Our first asynchronous component today is CS, the what and the why. As mentioned, it'll take about an hour. If you don't have them handy, you might want to pause here and grab your shared notes doc. We'll be accessing some links in there in just a little while. And then also, we will be navigating back over to Schoology so that you can complete those two little activities that I've alluded to. If you need to pause the video and go open those on your device now, please do. I'll take a breath and then we'll get started together. So what we're going to be doing in Module 1 are these two basic components. We like to call this our roles and goals. As mentioned in the kickoff, we wear three different hats throughout our PAsmart journey: the learner, the teacher, and the champion. The time that we spend together in this component, we are going to keep our champion hat on as we work together to define computer science and then also start to communicate why CS is important. So we're going to get started now with that first little goal of defining computer science. This will kind of help us with the what so that later on we are confident when we're talking about the why. It'll also help us as we navigate or transition into our teacher and our student roles too. Okay. So to get us started, I'd like you to think about the ways that computing is involved in your everyday life. If you've got a scrap of paper and you want to jot these down, or you just want to pause the video and think about it to yourself, please go ahead and take a moment to think about all the ways every day that computing or computers are involved in your life. So I actually kind of made a short list of a few different ways. Maybe you also listed some of these as well. So I thought about even in these kind of strange times when we're spending a lot more time at home, computing is definitely there. A lot of us do shopping online. Maybe you've been burning through that Amazon Prime account the last few months, or maybe you switched to doing curbside delivery for your groceries. Also, some of us have smart home devices that are maybe connected to a Google Home or an Alexa device. Maybe you have one of those programmable Nest thermostats or security cameras that you can control on an app. Automating bill payments, just being an adult in America today, you probably do a lot of just everyday things with computing. Also, we know that, guess what? You're using the impacts of computing right now because it's part of your job, your work. So as educators, we all shifted to virtual and distance learning back in the spring. We are definitely living it up on Zoom meetings all the time. Communicating with emails isn't new, but it's definitely something that we're used to every day. And then thinking about just you as a human being, not just as an educator or a professional. Maybe you like to watch Netflix. Maybe you play video games. Things that you do for fun might be connected to computing. Also, especially in the last few months, managing our own health. Maybe you've attended a telemedicine appointment instead of going into your physical doctor's office. Maybe you've got an Apple Watch or a Fitbit and you use that to track your exercise and fitness goals. There are a lot of ways that computing is involved in our everyday life. So let's think about that. In these examples, and I kind of skipped the slide, sorry about that. In these examples, we talked about computing, but not necessarily computer science. When I pay my bills online, or if I'm kind of checking my run on my Apple Watch, I'm not really thinking about what's going on behind the scenes or within those devices, my laptop or my Apple Watch. It's just a part of my everyday life. So let's talk about what is computer science. This is the definition that we use. It's also the definition that's in the K-12 computer science framework and in the CSTA K-12 student standards for computer science. So it's can be a little overwhelming, but when we think about it, we can narrow that down to studying computers, their processes, their components, and their impact, like how are they used? Computer science is a very broad term. A lot of times people just think that it has to do with like the programming, like writing code, but it's actually quite a lot more. So what we just kind of talked about is that some of those were that global impact. And we also talked about maybe the internet. I mentioned Amazon Prime, shopping on the internet. But these big ideas of computer science really showcase the key elements of computer science. And we're going to be exploring these throughout our journey together this year. So as I kind of mentioned, like CS studies computers, how they work, how we program them or give them instructions to do things, how to make them better, and how people use them and how they get used to impact the world around us. It's more than just that programming element. We'll put on our teacher hat for just a tiny moment here. When we think about computer science in education, we define a course or a class as being computer science if it incorporates these concepts. These, again, aren't just that programming element, but this image and these big ideas are used by, as I mentioned, the CSTA, the K-12 CS framework, and other large groups to help delineate between a computer science course and maybe not a computer science course. So let's kind of venture into the not computer science. So if we know what computer science is, we can start to weed out what is not computer science. You might already have some ideas about this. So quick list of what's not computer science. There are a lot of buzzwords and things happening in education, but it's very important that as we begin our journey together, we know the difference between computer science and other aspects of using technology as learners and as teachers. So what's not computer science? Well, just being good with computers or technology doesn't mean that you've been doing or are competent and skillful in computer science. You might be this person in your family or in your school building that just knows what to do if something doesn't work, or can figure out the latest and greatest new device that you've got in your classrooms. But that doesn't mean that you are working with that computer, its processes, and its impacts. Knowing how to use applications. So again, we're not here to dispute or argue the merits of other types of courses or instruction for our students. So knowing how to use applications is valuable, absolutely, for our students and their learning experience and then in their future, but that doesn't mean that it's computer science. So being able to create a Google slide presentation or writing an essay in Microsoft Word, skills, but not directly associated with computer science. And then lastly, just using a device. So being able to turn on your smartphone and set your alarm clock or any of those tasks with a device doesn't align with what is computer science. So thinking about that, and as I mentioned, there's a lot of buzzwords. Let's kind of dig into those a little bit too. So computer science builds on the aspects of computer literacy, ed tech, digital citizenship, information technology, but they're not synonymous. These definitions are available in the What is CS handout that's linked in the resources section of this module. So if you've got Schoology open and you want to go browse through those terms, you'll probably recognize the definitions for a lot of them, even if you're not familiar with the vocabulary associated with them. So again, we're not disputing that these aren't important components of education in general. They're just not synonymous. It's very easy to confuse a student's ability to use a computer or device with their content knowledge and their skills in computer science. There's one more word or big buzz term that I do want to spend a little bit of extra time on today because it'll kind of help us move forward in our journey. And we will definitely revisit it specifically in Module 2, and that's computational thinking. So computational thinking is definitely valuable. See how we're spending some extra time on it here? But it is not on its own computer science. Computational thinking is exactly what that says. It is a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking and problem solving. So for us as teachers and as educators, it's about us modeling thinking and learning and supporting students in being thoughtful about the work that they're doing. We'll revisit this again, like I said, in Module 2, but I wanted to throw this out here now so that as maybe you start to think about the year ahead and some things that you want to focus on, not only as a CS champion and teacher, but as building up your own knowledge of computer science, that's a strong foundation. Okay, so now we can kind of plug that away, like we know what computer science is. And just for good measure, I'm going to go back one more time. Show us there. It's also on that what is CS definition page. And now, so we've got the what. Let's talk about the why. Here we go. So we're going to talk about why computer science is important to your community. This is one of those big goals and deliverables for our entire pathway, our entire year-long journey as a PAsmart kind of family. So here's a big why, and maybe you've seen some of these statistics or this data before, but I feel like it's just important that we should cover this at least one more time, even if it's not new to you. So computing jobs and computer science skilled jobs are the #1 source of new wages in the United States. You may have seen a YouTube video or a news article that's like, we're preparing students for jobs that don't even exist yet, and the computer science is the future. And you know, sometimes like just the sheer volume of those kinds of articles and videos can just, you drown them out, you start to drown them out, but it's not without merit. It is true. And I want to point out though, as we kind of launch this journey together, that we as your PAsmart facilitators and team and the PAsmart program as a whole is not pushing for every student to be the next Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. What we want to make very clear is that when we're talking about these computing jobs and these pathways for our students, we're talking about jobs in literally every field and every other area possible. So maybe you can even start to think about ways that computing has changed all the types of jobs that our students might be interested in, or that we want to broaden their horizons about. Everything from agriculture to the students that are really into sports. We can show a whole way, so many ways that computer science and computing is part of those fields, and that having skills and knowledge in computer science could give our students more opportunities and open more doors for them to pursue those types of things that they really like. So going back to this number, this 500,000 current openings, this is a national statistic, but if we look at Pennsylvania, this is kind of a glass half full, glass half empty scenario for the Commonwealth, because we got a lot of open jobs in computing. Yay! But why are those jobs open? What do we need to do about that? So 500,000 jobs open across the country. Here's the situation in Pennsylvania, and really this is at the heart of the PAsmart initiative, not just for K-12, but for everybody. So thinking back to what we talked about in our live session, PAsmart for K-12, as led by the Department of Education, is focusing on creating computer science opportunities for our students and supporting educators and being prepared to create those experiences. But the PAsmart initiative as a whole is really about creating skilled citizens. So thinking about folks that are out of K-12, but also want to take advantage of all of these open jobs and these opportunities. So if we look at the data for Pennsylvania, and we will hit back on this later in this module, compared to other fields in Pennsylvania, there are more CS jobs and they pay better. Look at that. So again, these jobs are across the Commonwealth geographically, and they are across the chart of required education and skill. Not all of these are advanced degrees in programming and computer science. We're talking about jobs that might require an apprenticeship, on-the-job training, or maybe a 2-year program as well. So getting into this data a little bit more, because it's something you might be like, huh, where'd that come from? Or is that really true? Here's your first task or to do as part of this asynchronous part of Module 1. Your first task is to actually explore more about this data and this information, what we collectively call the CS and PA movement. That's our hashtag if you want to tweet. So what we're going to ask is that you browse the web pages that are linked in the shared notes doc. You can choose to pause the video here and go take some time to do that and come back to us. Or if you would like to finish watching this recording and then circle back and do this, totally up to you. But what's going to happen is that we'd like for you to take some time to browse those web pages. There are pages from PDE and our team, Patton, in partnership with PDE. There are pages that are specific to the broader PAsmart initiative from the governor's office. And if you're interested, there are some very specific pages and resources about the economic and workforce development data. So if that's something that's really interesting to you, you can kind of go deep into that. After spending some time just kind of browsing and taking it all in, there is a discussion board in Schoology that asks you to kind of report out maybe what stood out to you the most. What questions do you now have? Did you see something and now it's got your gears turning about like, I wonder if people in my school know this, or I never really thought about that, but now I'm wondering if I can make that connection for my students in this way. There's no right or wrong answer. There's not a yes, no, ABCD kind of response that we're looking for in the Schoology discussion. What we hope though is that starting off by browsing these resources, you do get more familiar with maybe some of the terminology, some of the data, and just the general sense of urgency around the need for computer science and obviously computer science education for K-12 in Pennsylvania. So again, if you'd like to take time to pause here, I'll take a breath, but if you'd like to carry on with us and circle back to this, you may do so. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to pause if you needed to. I do want to point out also that you've got this little like lightning bolt in the corner if you are watching the recording. And that's kind of an indication to us, your facilitator, but also to you that there is a task or a to-do associated with this part. Earlier, when I referenced the What is CS resource, you may have noticed that there's a sticky note in the corner of that slide. Again, just a little visual cue to both us, your facilitators, to mention that resource, and you that there is something linked or available in Schoology with this module that will help in our learning as we do the recording. Okay, so hopefully you've had some time to kind of look through some resources, but if you're choosing to do it later, that is okay too. We are going to kind of shift gears a little bit. In looking at those resources, we're thinking about the why kind of big picture, the why, from the perspective of PDE, maybe the why from the PAsmart overall cross-stakeholder team. We're going to narrow it down a little bit further than that though. If your district has already participated in the script workshop, hopefully these icons or this imagery is familiar. So the image that we have on the screen here, or those bubbles, in case you're listening, there are little icons that represent the 7 key values and impact areas, what we call these CS visions. So I'll just read them very briefly if you are listening to this recording. There's equity and social justice, competencies and literacies, citizenship and civic engagement, technological, social, and scientific innovation. There's economic and workforce development, school reform and improvement, and personal agency, joy, and fulfillment. In discussing the need for CS and CS education specifically, even without having background knowledge of these areas, most people start to blend some reasoning based on these areas. So you might get into a really passionate conversation of why you're a part of this pathway and why you think the PAsmart grant is very important to your school. And even if this is the first time you've seen this, your explanation or your arguments probably stem out of some of these areas. So the data that I shared earlier, and if you looked at the PAsmart website, that does stem a lot out of economic and workforce development. But again, it's not the only one, and it's not the end all be all. I didn't get into maybe some of the other stuff that I personally value a lot too. Speaking of personal, this is where our next activity takes place. Thinking about maybe why you think computer science is important, or maybe you think it's important, but you don't really have the language to go with it yet. That's something that we're going to be working on all year together, kind of building up our talking points and our comfort in addressing folks of different stakeholder groups, talking to parents, talking about our own students, talking to maybe your school board or your administrators, and being thoughtful about our audience and our own values and reasons for this work. So here's your next little activity. We're going to call it Find Your Why. So again, if you've participated in a script workshop, you've done something like this as a team, but we're asking that everybody, regardless if you've done script or not, complete this activity for us. Again, you can see the little lightning bolt. The CS Visions quiz linked there, and it's also linked in the Schoology discussion board for Module 1, is visionsquiz.csforall.org. It is super short. You can take it on your phone. It's not super crazy. Basically, there's, I believe it's like 15 or 20 questions that go rapid fire, and for each question, you have two little choices that you value, which one you think is more important, more valuable. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. There's a lot of different combinations, but ultimately what the results of that quiz will do is kind of spit out, based on your answers to that quiz, what your 3 big visions are. Like, what are those 3 areas or buckets that maybe drive your why you think computer science is so important for your kids and for your community and for our state. Once you've had a chance to take that quiz, your follow-up task is to actually share about it in the discussion board. So we ask that you share your results. What are your 3 categories? Maybe you want to take a screenshot of your results page and those 3 little icons, or just kind of bullet list in your discussion board post, here are my 3 visions. Is it surprising? Were you like, oh, you know, when I first saw those, I didn't think that really, I haven't really given much thought to like citizenship and civic engagement, but yeah, I guess so. So maybe, is it surprising, yes or no? And kind of what can you use, what can you do now that you have this kind of information or data in your pocket? Maybe does this also spark conversation with your colleagues in PAsmart or your administrators? Or does this make you want to dig deeper into these CS visions? We're not asking that you have to go and do anything as a direct result, but just be thoughtful of like, okay, now that I kind of know that, where's my mind at? Where am I headed with that? So that is your second task or activity in this module. And I promise that's the last one. So as a recap, you've got 2 little mini tasks to complete module 1. You're going to, in the shared doc, select those links that we gave from PDE and Patent and PAsmart, and just do a kind of browse, kind of a web scavenger hunt, and then reflect on that in the discussion board. And your other discussion board is about your why. So take the CS Visions quiz, post your results, and engage in some fruitful conversation there. And now I didn't mention it, but the whole point of us using discussion boards is to be collaborative. So after you've posted your initial post, you will be able to see other people's posts. And we do ask that you spend some time seeing what other people have to say, and at least give one or two folks, two people, um, a response. Write them back. Keep that conversation going. Maybe what they say makes you think of something different or new, and you want to build on top of that. Maybe you've got questions based on that, questions for them based on what they've said, or just questions for, rhetorical, hypothetical, like, I wonder if. Maybe their response makes you think of an experience that you've had and you feel comfortable sharing that with the group. But each discussion board that we do within this pathway, within the K-8 cohort, will always ask that you do your initial post. And then once you've done your initial post, you will be able to see other people's and that you reply to 2 of those. So that's what you need to wrap up module 1. I think it's not too much. You can push back, don't at me, but if you really feel kind of out in the deep end, definitely reach out to us at PAsmart@patent.net. But let's go ahead and look ahead to what comes next. It is summertime, and maybe you got summer brain happening right now. Module 1, we did our live activity on June 30th. Good to see you all. That's actually today, so don't judge me for wearing the same shirt. I promise it's clean. So we had our live meeting to kind of kick off the cohort. If you weren't able to join us, hopefully you've watched the recording before starting this asynchronous component. You've just watched this little pre-recorded presentation to get you kicked off into these 2 activities, and you have these 2 activities to do. Looking ahead, here was our to-do list that we shared during the live session. By August 1st, which is when we will start to kick off module 2. Here are your to-do things. Hopefully you've already bookmarked the shared notes doc, because we're going to use it a whole lot, and we will update it regularly with not only activities for the modules, but any important to-dos or communication from us. Hopefully you've already joined Schoology so that you could access this pre-recording. I don't know where you would have gotten it otherwise. And now, as you finish up your discussion board posts, you've completed module 1. Yay, team! The only thing left for you to do before we see you again, asynchronously pre-recorded in August for module 2, is to check on your district script status. As we mentioned in the live call and in the documentation, every LEA or district that participates in the PASmart Targeted Grant Program is required to participate in the script workshop, or supply documentation or evidence that they have a cohesive strategic plan specifically for computer science. Those script workshops are being hosted virtually now. They take less than a day, and they engage district teams with representation from different roles in the district. So your classroom teachers, your librarian, your administrators, in very thoughtful discussion and planning to kind of wrap your brains collectively as a district around what CS means to your district and what things that you hope to do to engage your students and your community in CS. So that Find Your Why activity that we just did is kind of a little taste test, a little sample size spoon of what types of things you'll discuss in script. If you've already done script, yay! If your district hasn't done script, please talk to your administrators. Please, if you need to, reach out to us, the PAsmart team, and we will help you get into a script workshop. As we get further along in the K-8 pathway and we start to think about the pilot project that you might want to be doing, we want to be able to align that with your district's bigger picture, your vision, and your strategic plan. So we hope that your district team is able to complete script in the upcoming months, and definitely by the time we start the next big module, which I believe kicks off in November. So if you're wrapping up summer and the beginning of the school year, you lose track of time, it's okay. There's no hard deadline to complete script, but the sooner the better, because that plan, the roadmap that you create as a team in the district in the script workshop will definitely be useful to you individually, and if you're doing the KA pathway with other colleagues as you start to plan and do things within our pathway. So again, if you've got questions about script, please reach out to us. We definitely want to help you with that. It was great to see you for the kind of second chunk of module 1. I will be looking for you in the discussion boards in Schoology. Have a wonderful day. We will see you soon.